which is about eco-friendly food. Environmental Impact Service lead Jay Nien of Switzerland's Bühler Group will present about Simplify Eco-Friendly Journey. Please kindly understand that this presentation is pre-recorded due to circumstances.
Hello, my name is Jay Nien. I work for the Bühler Group. At Bühler, I lead our environmental impact services for the group. And today I'm doing a recording for the 14th International Conference on Future Food. My apologies that I can't be there in person to give this presentation, but hopefully this still serves as a good substitute. Today I'd like to introduce you to Bühler, who we are as a company. I'll talk about what sustainability means to us, how we're trying to look at sustainability, how we're reducing our own environmental footprint, and in particular, how we're trying to use our technology and our services to help companies all over the world quantify, understand, report, and reduce their environmental footprint. So firstly, a quick introduction to Bühler. Bühler is a company, a part of everyday life of billions of people. You will come into contact with food, feed, and materials processed by our customers right from when you get up in the morning until the end of the day. You see on screen the iPhone, so the glass that might be coated on our technology, or the pigments and the inks in things like lipsticks or money. Food is a key part of our business, cereals, grains, that you see, and also in the feed industry for pet food, for animal feed. You see on screen some of the plant-based meats, a key trend driving sustainability. And at the end of the day, maybe one of the beers, that malt has been processed through our technology. So the three key areas of our business: we are a technology and solutions provider for food, grains, pulses, rice, maize, etc., all the key staple foods, in feed for animals, but also for fish feed, insects, pet food, and in advanced materials. So looking at things like die-casted parts for cars, thin film coatings, inks, paints, and also batteries. And across these industries, we in fact estimate that approximately 2 billion people are fed per day with food and feed processed on our equipment, and almost 1 billion people per day travel in vehicles with materials that have been processed through our equipment. And this is why sustainability is such an important topic for the Bühler Group. With such a wide and global impact, we have an enormous opportunity, but also a responsibility to make sure that these materials are processed in a sustainable way so that we can help sustainable businesses and also reduce the environmental footprint of the products and solutions that are then processed through our technology. So let's now take a closer look at sustainability and what it means for us. Our company purpose, Innovations for a Better World, is absolutely linked to our sustainability commitment, which for us means balancing the needs of economy, nature, and humanity in every decision. So it doesn't mean that everything that we do is every time optimized for environmental sustainability, because if it's not something that's economically sustainable, then by nature, it's not sustainable over the long term. So that's why we always look at economy, helping the companies we work with sustainable, profitable growth, enabling them. Nature, we see everything talking about CO2 emissions, but there are many aspects to nature, biodiversity, different environmental metrics, and of course, humanity as well. So making sure that the companies we work with help to provide safe, affordable nutrition, sustainable mobility, and also our impact in education, and training really all over the world. So today I'll deep dive a little bit more on the environmental aspects of sustainability, but it's certainly not to forget that sustainability covers many different topics. And here we see a couple of areas where environmental sustainability really comes hand in hand with, let's say, more humanitarian topics, looking at things like food security and a sustainable food supply. And these are some of the areas that we're also working in that go much beyond environmental sustainability or eco-friendly sustainability, and really look at things like food security. So really using things like grain storage to make sure that we have a secure food supply, or supporting companies that make huge processing plants like food parks to feed large populations. We're seeing other trends like ancient grains, which help us to process grains locally, and of course how we bring the industry together and make sure that companies have the right training so that they can really process these materials securely as well as sustainably. But as we deep dive a little bit further on nature, here are some of the commitments from the Bühler Group focusing on nature. Firstly, we commit to have solutions ready to multiply by 2025 that reduce energy, waste and water in our customers' value chains. And I'll show you more about what that means and some examples of solutions and how we quantify the sustainability impact of all of the key products processed through our technology. We also have to look at how we support our customers to measure and reduce greenhouse gases. So oftentimes our customers, more than 90% of their own scope 1 and 2 carbon emissions are from running our technology, and our technology can not only help them to quantify and reduce their, let's say, scope 1 and 2, but also upstream their scope 3 and their downstream impact as well. It's important that as Bühler, we are also looking at our own environmental footprint, so we proactively collaborate with our supply chain to make sure that we reduce the footprint of the machines that we supply. And also we have a commitment to reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 60%, also reducing the footprint of the machines that we supply. And lastly, and really something we're exploring through partnerships, is the topic of biodiversity. This is something that we see growing in importance, and we're looking at how we can protect and restore biodiversity as well. So diving a little bit deeper, our sustainability commitments, yes, they cover our own sites and operations, but really the largest impact that we have and the big lever that we have are the plants and the machines that are processing materials day in, day out. That's why we have commitments on our own assets, but also that commitment to focus and support on our customers to measure and reduce their greenhouse gases and look at how we can reduce energy waste and water in the value chain by 50%. Now, if we look at this in terms of numbers, we've put on the screen here our own carbon footprint, the carbon footprint of our upstream supply chain, so typically a lot of the metal and materials required to make machines. But really the biggest part of our carbon footprint is the use of our products, so our customers using our machines. And this is orders of magnitude higher than our own carbon footprint. And that's why we have both sets of goals to look at our own emissions, our own carbon footprint, but also supporting our customers, because that's the biggest lever that we have in terms of acting on climate change and helping to contribute to the world reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So in a bit more detail, here is our own carbon footprint. We publish this every year in our annual report. You can see there that we have our scope 1 and 2. This is the footprint that we have, typically the electricity and gas in our factories worldwide. We have the footprint of our upstream supply chain, which is one order of magnitude bigger than the footprint of our operations, typically the materials we need to make machinery. But really that downstream is in the order of magnitude of millions of tons, and it's much, much bigger than, let's say, the footprint required to make machinery. And it's the use of the flour mills or the machines in the flour mills that are making flour or pasta or wafer or any of those products that I showed earlier in the industries where we are processing. So firstly, it's important that as Bühler, we also walk the talk. So what are one or two things that we are doing and how are we progressing towards our scope 1 and 2 target of reducing our emissions by 60%? Well, I'm glad to say that we are so far on track. We've quantified our emissions and our baseline year is 2019. And so far we see a reduction of about 19% compared to our jump off point, our base year on our journey to targeting 60% emissions. Some of the actions that you see here on screen are helping us to do that. So we have a quantification across the entire company. We know where our carbon footprint comes from, and we're making investments like solar panels, upgrading heating systems, air conditioning systems, or retrofits, installations, more efficient lighting, more efficient machines in the factory, all over the world, all over our manufacturing facilities, and also our other sales and service offices to make sure that we can hit our target to reduce 60% by 2030. But as I mentioned, if we look at the impact of our own carbon footprint versus what we can do for the companies that are using our machine, or let's say the use of our sold products, the order of magnitude is much, much bigger for what we can do in terms of helping our customers. And that's really where I want to focus the presentation now. So if we look at the innovations and the new technologies that we supply, they have a much bigger magnitude, particularly when you look at the scale of processing. And there are some examples that you see here on the screen. Across the group, we have many different solutions for roasting, toasting, drying, etc. And there is one example where one of our roasting units, up to 50% less energy, is helping companies using that nut roaster reduce their footprint by 50%. And we have many such examples across the group. We also can look at things like when we coat glass, what's the impact on an entire building, helping our customer's customer to then reduce the footprint of their building in operation. And if we look at just how many emissions that is with the volume of glass coated worldwide, that's also a huge impact. Sustainability also means how can we look at different categories of products. So every time that we can help companies to make a plant-based meat versus regular meat, then we know that the footprint of meat is high, but we then enable that category shift so we can drop the footprint of the foods eaten by consumers, and plant-based meat is a great example of that. One key aspect of Bühler is that we estimate that we have access to approximately 1 billion tons of side streams that are processed on our machinery. If you think of processing wheat, approximately 20% ends up in bran, which is not wasted. It goes to the animal industry and is animal feed. But how can we try and bring more of these side streams, some of which are waste, some of them are in different industries, back into the food industry and adhere to the hierarchy of circular economy. So bringing them back so that we can feed people with some of these materials. So circular economy is really a key aspect for us, and that starts with reducing waste and then trying to bring materials back into the industry. So circular economy is also a key topic for us, and there are many different examples of circular economy all across our company in both organic and technical materials. So for ingredients that cannot be brought back because of contamination, for example, we can use them as energy for biomass. We're also in the insect processing industry. Insects can then recycle food waste or feed streams and then provide high quality nutrition to animals, replacing things like fish feed. And a key aspect of circular economy is just preventing waste. And that's where things like our optical sorting machines are increasing the yield because they are accurate in terms of removing defective grains or grains that we don't want in the mass stream, and therefore we're trying to reduce waste before that waste even occurs. On the technical side, we're also looking at how we can use like remanufacturing to reduce the need for virgin metals and trying to enable a circular economy by using metals in our processes. How can we use secondary alloys, recycled alloys, etc. So circular economy is indeed an important topic in this area as well. So now one of the key things that we do across the company, and this is where my team and I really focus, is looking at the sustainability impact of all of our technologies. So what we do is we look at the environmental footprint of all key products processed by Bühler technology, wheat, pasta, for an example, and we look at the entire value chain. And then what's the impact of different solutions and how is that solution helping to reduce the footprint of that product? And you can see here some examples on the screen. We have new grinding systems that are reducing energy by 10%, sometimes more. And we can calculate for a typical line, that means that we're avoiding 200 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. I've already talked about the optical sorting example. By reducing false rejects by up to 50%, then in fact, eliminating that waste, we can save even more, potentially 650 tons of carbon in a typical milling line with an optical sorting unit every year. Another example there is the die casting unit. The addition of a servo drive saves energy and it saves carbon. So we have this extensive quantification program that helps us to understand the sustainability impact of machinery. We look not only at things like CO2 equivalent, but also circular economy and other key important metrics: agricultural land occupation, water depletion, waste, and of course the impact on the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, because this is how it puts sustainability in the broader context. Because as I said at the beginning, sustainability is not just environment, it's not just CO2 emissions, it's really that broader picture: food security, food safety, economy, nature, and humanity. Another big lever for us is our services. So we might supply machinery into the food industry, and then over time that machinery decreases in efficiency. That's absolutely natural. So then our services can help with retrofits, installations, assessments, or maybe electrification, digital services, all to help companies measure and reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And in fact, my team and I provide services in sustainability. So we work with the Bühler service team to help companies measure their environmental footprint, understand their environmental footprint, and also reduce it. And there are some of the examples that you see on screen: companies looking to quantify their greenhouse gas footprint, and companies looking to quantify the environmental footprint of individual products. And that's really the purpose of our sustainability services, is that we believe sustainability should be quantified. And if we can help the companies that we work with to build a competitive advantage out of sustainability, reducing energy cost, increasing yield, but also then looking at how can they sell sustainable products at a premium. If we can make sustainability something that's profitable, then it will scale to the level that we need to actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions in order to stay in line with the Paris Agreement with the 1.5 degrees, which is looking unlikely, but we need to do as much as we possibly can. So as I mentioned earlier, in our sustainability services, we help companies to quantify their environmental footprint, to understand where these emissions come from, to report their results, and to reduce their footprint, taking actions with the fastest return on investment first. More concretely, what that means is things like Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 assessments in line with the greenhouse gas protocol, the global reporting standard for measuring and managing greenhouse gas emissions. Looking at product life cycle assessments, what's the environmental footprint of a product, as more companies are being asked for this data as they contribute to the footprint of their customers' products and then what consumers ultimately buy. It also looks at things like reduction strategies, so how can we assess installed assets and not only reduce carbon but also reduce cost, and then combine these assessments with holistic value chain reduction measures, looking at things like adhering to science-based targets as an example. And also all of our quantifications can be certified to the relevant standards so that you can talk about results with confidence. And we also support to then embed this into the company with trainings so that you can really build a holistic climate strategy. I have a couple of example reference cases, and if you go online and look at our website, then you can see these reference cases and many more. We do a lot in the industries where we are present, but it doesn't have to be Bühler Machinery and Technology. But here's a classic example. This is a mill in Germany where we helped Hamilton Müller to look at the environmental footprint of their products, of the flour and the bran, all the way from farm to factory gate. We were able to provide different comparisons. We're looking at the site carbon footprint and also help to do a quick analysis of what CO2 neutrality or reducing that footprint really means. We offer this to companies across many different industries. Another example from here in Switzerland is Kagi in the confectionery business. This was a good example where Bühler were on site looking at the different machinery, how to reduce the environmental footprint. We also supply our digital services, looking at things like overall equipment efficiency, energy management, for example, and also then all together helping Kagi look at their Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions, information that within Europe now is regulated. More and more companies have to quantify and publish this type of data. So finally, as I conclude my presentation, I wanted to show you one or two examples of what this really looks like in a project. Of course, every project is much bigger, but what does the carbon footprint look like? This is a typical example, an end result where we looked at the company's Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 footprint. Of course, this is just a generic example. And you can see already on screen that a company can very quickly get the overview of where their emissions come from, which categories, and you can break that down so you can start to tackle things like your carbon emissions. Our carbon quantification services are available offline, but they're also available online. So we now offer software where companies can access this carbon quantification model through our environmental impact calculator. It becomes easier to copy the carbon footprint from the previous year and then just simply update the figures so that it's very fast, very accurate, and also very easy and visual for you to be able to see your carbon footprint. So in case you're interested in that, you can also get in touch. And finally, I wanted to show an example of a life cycle assessment. So this is again a general example, but can be made specific within a project. But what does a life cycle assessment look like? This is a typical example in the wheat milling industry. Grains and flours typically follow this curve where the raw materials are quite high. And you can see here that the environmental footprint has been quantified all along the value chain. So starting with raw materials through grain storage, transport, milling, distribution and retail. We're looking here at the CO2 equivalent per ton of wheat flour, but also other metrics. So energy consumption, water depletion, agricultural land occupation, and waste. Now, of course, these numbers will vary depending on the farming practices, the transport distances, the cost of electricity in terms of carbon, which changes all over the world. But this at least hopefully gives you an idea of what a typical life cycle assessment of a product will look like. And this is what we use to quantify the sustainability impact of technology and understand the impact of different technologies and how they can contribute to helping companies to reduce their environmental footprint. So hopefully that gave you an insight into Bühler and what sustainability means for Bühler, how we are trying to quantify the sustainability impact of key products, of key technologies so that we can scale these into the market to really try and achieve what we need to, which is staying in line with the Paris Agreement, which is helping companies with those different dimensions of sustainability: economy, nature, and humanity. I also showed a little bit about our services and how we're helping to inspect, to assess existing assets and then make them more efficient and also more sustainable. And that's one of the fastest routes to impact. We cannot just replace all equipment to make it more sustainable. We also just need to look at exactly what's already there and how we can then make that run as efficiently as possible. And lastly, I showed an insight into our environmental impact services, helping companies to quantify, understand and reduce their environmental footprint. In particular, how we're looking at the greenhouse gas assessment as well as life cycle assessments, bringing some of this online so that companies can really do this for themselves. If you have any questions, then please do get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we've watched Mr. J09's presentation video, and on behalf of the organizers, I'd like to extend my gratitude for his participation through the pre-recorded video. Distinguished guests, please kindly understand we cannot proceed to the live Q&A session for this lecture.